Mexico today issued an advisory for its citizens traveling to Arizona. With the new state law mandating police stop anyone they suspect is an illegal alien, Mexico's foreign minister said any Mexican citizen could be, quote, harassed at any time. Immigration, just one of the thorny issues that states are dealing with these days, and just one of the political hot potatoes congressional candidates are grappling with as the midterms approach. And tonight we're lucky enough to be able to talk through this and other issues with two of the nation's most prominent governors, Minnesota's Tim Pawlenty and Montana's Brian Schweitzer. They're joining me here in Los Angeles, where we are all attending philanthropist Mike Milken's annual conference, where we'll all be a little bit later tonight. So welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Let's start with the immigration. And Governor Pawlenty, I do want to get you on the record on this. Do you support the law that's been passed in Arizona?
I haven't had a chance to go through it in detail yet, Campbell, but I think it reflects a number of things.
But it's been all over cable news for the last 3 days.
But I think it reflects a number of things. First of all, Arizona is clearly frustrated with the lack of attention and action from the federal government on this issue. Number two, we need an immigration system that allows for legal and orderly and reasonable immigration, but the current system is not that. It's frustrating and it's broken, so it needs to be fixed. So they're taking steps to do that. I applaud their efforts to try to have better enforcement, but I am concerned about the standard that law enforcement can and must interact with anybody and try to detain or interact with somebody.
But nobody seems to know what the standard is.
That's the problem. I think the definition of what's the probable cause to believe that somebody's here illegally, that would have to be better defined, and we got to get some comfort around it.
So you're not okay with the law as it is now? I mean, there are a lot of people saying it's unconstitutional, and there are also a lot of people, as I'm sure you know, who believe that if you're Latino and you're in Arizona, you should be afraid to walk down the street now.
We do need better enforcement for immigration, but we need to do it in a fair manner, and we need to do it in a non-discriminatory manner. And how they interpret this language in this statute, in this law, which is pretty ambiguous, is going to be a very important part about whether this is fair and whether it works or not, and that remains to be seen.
So if you were governor of Arizona and this law had passed, would you have signed it?
Well, I want to go through it in detail. I haven't had a chance to read it, Campbell. But again, I think we do need better enforcement. We need better enforcement at the border. And it's okay. And I would support having, fraud-proof, tamper-proof identity document for visitors and immigrants. But to be able to say to law enforcement, you must approach people on reasonable suspicion. How are you defining reasonable suspicion? It has a lot of definitional work that needs to be done.
It's terrifying for a lot of people, and I think rightly so. Governor, where are you on this?
I'd have vetoed the bill, and let me tell you why. The problem that we have with immigration is we haven't given a path for people to become citizens. But if you're a roofer and you need people who roof, if you have gardeners that work for you or people in your kitchen staff, you're hiring illegals. And so we're saying to the illegals, you're the one breaking the law, and what are we doing about the people who are employing them? I understand the frustration that Arizona has, New Mexico and Texas with this immigration wave. But this isn't the first time in American history that we've had this sort of thing. We've had this sort of thing with the Chinese, with the Irish, with the Germans, with the Norwegians. And so now there's a big crush of Latin Americans. But let's face it, southwest part of the United States was part of Latin America, and now it's part of the United States.
So, as a Democrat, though, this is likely now to be on the front burner in some, form heading into the midterm elections. And how does that help you as a Democrat? Do you, I mean, in terms of your priorities, especially someone who's from a more conservative state, what do you think that means for more moderate Democrats who are facing tough races?
We are a country of immigrants. If the Crow and the Cheyenne and the Blackfeet of Montana could redo their immigration policy, none of us would be in Montana except for the native Montanans. So this isn't the first time that we've dealt with it. We have got to give a path to people to become citizens. We cannot have millions of people that are undocumented working in an underground economy, and it means Washington, D.C. has to act.
Should they act now? Should this be top priority?
They should have acted during the last 5 years, but I think Arizona, this is a cry for help. We need help down here, and I think the federal government's got to step in.
So talk to me more generally about 2012, and I'll start with you and come back to you on this, because a lot of people are anticipating it's going to be a really, really tough year for Democrats.
Well, I can't tell you about 12 because that's a long time from now.
I'm sorry,
10.
I misspoke. 2010. I looked at Governor Pawlenty and it made me think of 2012. I meant 2010. A lot of people do think it's going to be a tough November for Democrats.
Well, if history is any guide for both parties, the party in power loses a few seats. I think that they're probably going to lose some seats in the House. We'll probably lose some seats in the Senate, and Republicans will probably gain a little bit among governors.
So you are one of the few, I think, governors who could probably, I don't know how many others have a surplus, frankly, right now. And Democrats are being painted as big spenders. That's kind of the tag they are getting heading into November. So what advice would you give for your colleagues?
Well, you have to actually start before the earthquake arrives. So 3 years ago, I was challenging every expense in government and building large surpluses to protect ourselves from a downturn. A lot of people say, whatever money comes in, you should spend. But since we can't deficit spend at the states, the responsible thing is to put money aside. That's what we did in Montana.
So, what are your plans? Let me just put it on the table because, I've got your schedule here.
And I'm going to open up a rodeo or some kind of,
we're going to the cattle business together.
In Montana.
That sounds pretty good. So I've got your schedule. You're going to South Carolina next week, obviously a key primary state. You've already been to Iowa, New Hampshire this year. That looks an awful lot, I think, to most people, like somebody testing the waters.
Well, I have a PAC. Thanks for asking. It's Freedom First PAC, TimPawlenty.com. But more seriously, 2010 is right in front of us. This is going to determine the direction of the country in the near term. We'll worry about 2012 and what I and others may do after these elections, Campbell. But I haven't made a decision about what I'm going to do or not.
So what's your deadline? How are you thinking about it?
Well, I don't have a hard deadline, but I want to finish my time as governor. I want to do all I can to help the Republican governors get elected or reelected this fall. I'm the vice chair of the Republican Governors Association. And then I've got this federal PAC to help federal candidates. And I'll worry about 2012 and early 2011.
All right, gentlemen. Well, we look forward. We're going to continue this discussion for a much smaller audience a little bit later tonight. But to both of you, appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be in.
Coming up.